Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rishi Agrawal. Thank you so much for taking the time today and joining this webinar. Our topic for today is a very interesting topic and very relevant to the compliance officers in India. It is key challenges faced by compliance officers and can technology help? That's our topic for today. For the first 15 to 20 minutes, we will talk about the challenges that face our typical day-to-day environment, make sure that we can all get to the same page with respect to the kind of problems we face, and then evaluate if technology solutions can help us manage these problems better. That is really the topic of discussion. I want to wrap it up in about 35, and I would want to so that we can take specific questions. So with that said, started. Before we move forward, just a quick note on Avantis. Avantis is a TeamLease company, and we are India's leading company in the space of regulatory technology. Companies across the manage the life cycle of all their compliances. We currently work with over 1,000 legal entities in India across about 40 different industries and help them bring greater control and compliance in their regulatory environment. With that said, let's move to the topic of our discussion today. So what are the challenges of compliance in India? If you are a practitioner in India, you would realize that managing compliance in India is an extremely complex undertaking. And here are reasons why it is so. So let's move forward. Do you see the cartoon here? Do you see our compliance officer, which is probably a lot of people on this call, right in the center? On one side, Companies Act of 2013 makes management personnel, key management personnel, more accountable to the government statutory bodies and boards, and they are accountable for making sure that there are compliances being done in the company, and there is a process to make sure that these compliances get done. So on one hand, Companies Act of 2013 makes KMPs, board members, far more accountable. But on the other hand, if you look at the situation, a compliance officer often finds themselves helpless. It is a scenario where there is accountability without appropriate empowerment. And why is this the case? Because compliance is not one person's responsibility within the company. Within an organization, there are multiple functional teams across labor, finance and taxation, factories, commercial, secretarial, and so on. And each one of them may have different process owners or functional heads. Each of these functional heads typically never report into a compliance officer. So you have a scenario where a compliance officer is accountable to the board and to the statutory bodies. They have to certify that they are compliant, the law of the land is being followed, there is a repeatable process and systems internally. But the reality is the functional heads who are often responsible for functional compliances, they often don't report into a compliance officer. And that's where there is an accountability without empowerment. I'm sure a number of you, when you see this slide, can resonate with this message. And this is the first and the most important message from a compliance challenge in India perspective. Let's move on to the next item here. Compliance is a complex subject. Why is it complex? Because there are multiple levels involved: central government, state government, and local bodies. A typical medium to a large company in India, they are spread across multiple states, union territories. They may have plants and locations in various municipal bodies, gram panchayats, and zilla parishads, and hence the number of compliances that are applicable to them, or the acts that are applicable to them, are across these three bodies: central, state, and local. Next item here is compliance has many categories. So while most companies confuse compliance with a company secretary, when you look at the categories of compliances, they typically fall into multiple buckets. We all are familiar with labor, finance and taxation, commercial, secretarial, environmental, health and safety, industry specific, and other general. Labor, I think we are all very familiar with all the labor laws across central government and various state governments. Finance and taxation, which includes direct taxes, indirect taxes, FEMA, and so on and so forth. Commercial is where the compliances with respect to the hoists, the lifts, the cranes, the pressure vessels, the boilers, all of those with respect to equipment, Bureau of Indian Standards, Lift Act, Electricity Act, all of those fall under the commercial category. Secretarial is very clear on the MCA and SEBI side. EHS stands for Environmental Health and Safety, and this pertains to the Environmental Act of 1986 and all the solid waste management and other regulations with pollution control boards, various permissions, licenses, consent to operate, and so on. Industry specific are applicable if you operate in specific kinds of industries. So as an example, an insurance company typically has to deal with IRDA regulations. Similarly, a food processor would typically deal with FSSAI, a telecom company will deal with TRI, and so on. So those are industry specific compliances and so on. Now, in addition to the levels and categories, there are also types of compliances. What I mean by types are these are compliances which may be time-based, event-based, and checklisted. Time-based are compliances which have a specific frequency. They have a monthly, quarterly, half-yearly, annual kind of frequencies. Event-based are based on events as and when they happen. And event-based compliances can fall into secretarial events which pertain to MCA and SEBI events. And at the same time, there are other events which are non-MCA and SEBI, such as fire in the factory, death of an employee, change of office address, change of factory manager, and so on. These are all event-based compliances because such events do trigger a number of statutory compliances and responsibilities, and hence they need to be done as and when the events happen. Checklisted compliances are those which happen as a result of a checklist. They don't have a start date and end date, and they need to get done throughout the year, such as various displays on your receptions or various displays in your factory or in your office premises. They're all a part of checklisting. Now, why we are talking about all of this is to draw out a point that compliance is a complex subject. It is spread across multiple departments and multiple functions, and all of these departments and functions may have their physical presence across the length and breadth of the country. It may be in different states, different union territories, different local bodies, and so on. And hence, it becomes an extremely complex subject. Moving on to the next slide here, we just saw why compliance is complex. And since it is complex, a typical organization, mid or large size, forget the small ones, actually do not have the in-house expertise. They do not have the people who understand all the central acts, the various categories, the various types, various levels. They do not have the people who would know the nuances of how these compliances need to get done. So the second challenge that we are going to talk about today is lack of in-house expertise. Within that, I often like to break this problem into two parts. First, applicable acts and compliances. Most organizations in India today lack having a list of all the applicable acts and compliances. Now ask yourself this question, and I challenge all the people who are on this call today to ask yourself this question. When was the last time you actually did a quick compliance applicability review across your company? When I talk about applicability review, I mean all the applicable acts, all the relevant applicable compliances, various kinds of licenses, registrations, filings, consent orders, renewals, and so on. So while the business has grown, while we have expanded our geographical footprint in more than one location, but the reality is we did not go back and do an applicability assessment. So one big problem that we have with compliance officers in India today is they do not have one list of all the applicable acts and compliances. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is typical compliance operations are dealt with by one or two dedicated people, if at best. So you have a company secretary who's responsible for all your MCA, SEBI kind of compliances. Typically, most organizations also ask the company secretary to play the role of a compliance officer, and that company secretary is made accountable to certify to the board, just like what we saw in the first slide, but they do not have dedicated resources working for them. So the first problem was you don't have the list of applicable acts and compliances. And the second problem here is that you do not even have the resources in order to manage this list, call people up, seek updates, seek the details, make sure that all the key compliances are getting done, and so on. So these are fundamentally two problems, which is pointing to the fact that companies lack in-house expertise. What do these people have to do? If you look at it, there are various aspects of these compliances. We are dealing with filings, challans, registrations, returns, various kinds of renewals, payments, licenses, consent orders, and many more. And these items are spread across all your headquarters, various offices across the country, various factories and plants. You may have warehouses, you may have sales offices, support centers, and so on. Now imagine you having 15, 20 such locations across the country. The number of compliances that you may be dealing with is going to be humongous. And the problem here is that no one person in the company has a full view of what these applicable acts and compliances are across central, state, and local bodies, across the 6 categories of compliances that we talked about, which included labor, finance and taxation, environmental health and safety, secretarial, commercial, and industry specific. And based on that, all the time-based, event-based, and checklisted compliances. So this is a huge problem that companies deal with. Now let's look at why we are talking about this being such a huge problem. I'm showing you a small chart and depiction here, which is actually taken from our real life customer examples. We've broken them down into a small customer, a medium customer, and a large customer. If you see our small customer, a small customer is one which today has 1 headquarter and 1 plant. A medium customer is 1 headquarter with 6 plants. And a large customer is 1 headquarter with 11 plants. The data that you see here is not fictitious. It is our real life customer examples. If you look at the small company today, we see that they have about 65 acts that are typically applicable to them across all the 6 categories, and about 750 plus compliances across various categories. And that results in about 120 filings a year. So when you deal with this scenario, about 23 registrations, 750 compliances across 65 odd acts, and 120 filings is what a small organization deals with. But as you go from small to medium and the number of plants grows from 1 to 6, you can see that the number of applicable compliances has significantly shot up from 750 to over 5,500 compliances. When you deal with the number of licenses, registrations, consent orders, that number goes from 23 to about 98. So that's the significant jump there, and the number of filings increased from 120 to about 500 plus filings a year. And when we move from a medium-sized organization to a large-sized organization, you can see that the number of applicable compliances is now closer to 10,000. The number of acts are easily over 200. The number of filings are close to 1,000. And this is the complexity that compliance officers are dealing with. Scientific studies say that a human brain cannot process more than 9 items at a time. Now imagine our poor compliance officer who's dealing with about 10,000 compliances in a 12-month scenario. You're dealing with close to 800 to 900 such compliances across central, state, local, across 6 different compliance types, categories and 3 different types, and scattered across the length and breadth of the country. And 800 compliance a month typically translates into about 40 compliances a day that a compliance officer is certifying to. And all of this has made the environment extremely complex. Among our clients, we have some clients who have hundreds of branches, and every branch has specific number of compliances. It has various kinds of licenses. There are renewals that are required which become due every so often, and we find that these companies, they slip on their compliances because there is no real tracking mechanism. Things become due for renewal, but since they don't have this control, they lose track of these and often end up paying hefty penalties as a result of these problems. So that was our third number of challenge that we want to talk about today. One of the key problems that companies deal with is having manual tracking and management systems. Now, how do we define manual tracking? I like to call them in three parameters. They are ad hoc, people dependent, and paper based. So when I talk about ad hoc, it means that there is no calendar that they have access to. There is nothing in front of them which says that in this given month we have 400 compliances coming due. These are ad hoc, as and when they remember things, as and when somebody prompts them, they get to know of these. Second is people dependent. A lot of times we see that companies are heavily relying on people to manage their compliances. And as you know, these days, loyalty is not something that we can ask for. People move on to their next assignment. The average life of a person in the company is anywhere between 24 to 30 months. Chances are, during this time, this resource or this individual may have acquired a lot of information on various nuances with respect to compliance management, but when they leave, all these nuances get lost with them. And the new person will take time to learn all of these things. Now, this is a huge problem because every so often, as key people in the company leave, they take along a lot of knowledge that they have gathered over a period of time. And since there are little systems or no systems in place, the new person comes in and ends up taking another 6 months to get their arms around this complex problem. My apologies to you. The third block should have been paper-based, and by mistake, it says people-dependent again. The third box is actually paper-based. That means all these compliances, various applications that you make for licenses, various acknowledgements, receipts, challans, various maintenance of registrations that you may have, various kinds of paperwork that you do, typically sits in physical files. Now, the problem with physical files is that they are stored in specific locations in people's drawers, on specific floors of the buildings, in specific factory locations and department locations, and they are not accessible when you need them from a centralized location. And hence, the compliance officer, if they want to go through the lower level of detail, sometimes misses having access to these files, and they are not able to make the right decisions at the right time because they don't have access to the application that was filed with the competent authority, or the receipt or the acknowledgement that the company had received, or a caveat that had come through, or a register that was maintained and a copy of that register. So when these things are not available, they don't end up making optimum decisions from a compliance management perspective. So this is the next problem that we wanted to talk about, which is manual tracking and management, which is highly ad hoc, paper-based, and people-dependent compliance program. Let's move to the next main area today, which is a fluid regulatory environment. I'm sure if all of us were in a room today, and if I requested you to, by a show of hands, to tell me how many of you would agree that India has an extremely complex regulatory environment, I would have seen a lot of hands raised in the room. And I'm sure some of you would agree with me that India has a highly complex regulatory environment, and not just complex, we also deal with a highly fluid or dynamic regulatory environment. So we looked at various nuances of these compliances, and they translate into over 1,100 acts, over 58,000 compliances with close to 3,000 filings a year. And folks, this is the database that we deal with today. Our database today has over 1,100 acts, 58,000 compliances, and 3,000 filings, and we update it hourly. So we deal with artificial intelligence, machine learning, smart crawler, and OCR-based algorithms, and we monitor over 2,000 government websites every morning, and we capture 3,000 changes per year to the law of the land. That's the fluidity that we are dealing with. Now, if you represent one of the medium to a large size company in India with presence across different states and union territories, you would believe me when I say that a number of these 3,000 changes per year actually affect you and your operations on a day-to-day basis. Now, if I can entertain you for 2 minutes and request you to go to our website at avantis.co.in for 1 minute with me and take a look at this website. This is India's first and the only digital compliance and legal update website. You will see that we capture these changes on a day-to-day basis. So if I scroll down, you can see that there are changes that we have captured as of this morning. They are broken down into various categories of compliances, whether they are central or state, and each one of them has a synopsis, capability to bookmark, capability to like them, and so on. And let me draw your attention to this small table at the bottom. If you see, there are 7 changes that we have already captured this morning. We captured 13 changes yesterday. This week, it is already 54 changes. This month, the number of changes have already crossed 205. And believe it or not, last quarter, it was 929 changes that Avantis captured in the legal and regulatory environment in India. And these changes are adds to compliances. They may be removal of some compliance line items. They may be changes to the duty structure, changes to the penalty or the interest calculations, changes to the sample form, one-time extensions that may have occurred. All of these are examples of the changes, and they affect your regulatory liability. Now, I invite you to click on any one of these changes, go to the next level, and you will see a quick synopsis of the change. It is classified by the category, by the type, and the act. When you bring your mouse to the act, you will see what act is that change under. Here is a synopsis, and if you wanted to see the document, we also have provided you the capability to see the regulatory gazette right there. In addition, you will see that the department and the ministry and the affected industry are also there. You can go to the legal update section of the website and see that there are over 7,000 legal updates that are captured there, broken down by industry, date ranges, and you can see them via the notification types, which are compliance notifications and informational notifications. Compliance notifications typically mean that you have a change to the compliance and hence it may affect you directly. Informational notifications are more clarification to an existing item which may have caused. And you can go and select any one of these categories and go to the next level. I also invite you to go and sign up for our weekly newsletter so that you can benefit from this. Let's go back to our presentation now. So I hope we appreciate the fact that we are not only complex, we are dealing with too many acts and compliances. We are also dealing with a highly fluid regulatory environment, and it is important to make sure that you stay on top of your compliance environment by tracking these changes. Now, the second part of our discussion today was, can technology really help? And yes, folks, technology can help. And, I want to say that technology brings in efficiency, human productivity, and we've seen it historically as well. I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with companies like Zomato and Swiggy. They have changed the way food gets produced, distributed, and consumed by helping us leverage the power of technology. We are also very familiar with companies like Uber and Ola, which have changed the way urban transportation gets done today. Again, they have used the power of technology to make sure that ability for a consumer to connect with a provider is improved via technology. We have seen a lot of accounting softwares which make our accountants smarter. We have seen a lot of ERPs which make the organization overall processes smarter. We have seen HRMS systems which make the HR department and all the employees smarter, more efficient. It brings greater degree of transparency and control. And that's what technology is going to do to the regulatory areas also. So now let's go into the next level of detail and see how technology can help all of us to become smarter in our own workplaces. So let's look at 4 key building blocks of a compliance management system. The first and the most important thing is transparency. What do we mean by transparency? So we spoke about a compliance officer who is accountable to the regulatory bodies and the boards. And in order for them to stay accountable, they need to have transparency. What is transparency? They need to know what is applicable in the company across all the locations, including entities, sub-entities, plants, factories, warehouses, sales offices, and other elements. So first is knowing what is applicable. Second, knowing who's responsible. That means who is going to be held responsible if this compliance gets done or doesn't get done. Now we look at responsible party in 2 categories, performers and reviewers. Performers are folks who do the work. Reviewers are folk who are like checkers who make sure that the work is done well. Third, when is the item due? So in a given month, we saw that for a mid to a large sized organization, you are dealing with hundreds of compliance line items. So it's very, very important to know when are these items due. Next item is, has something been completed? And if not, where is it stuck? What is the issue and what intervention is required? So when we deal with transparency, we want to make sure that a compliance officer is able to answer some of these questions well. What is applicable? Who is responsible? When is it due? Has it been completed? And if not, where are the issues so that appropriate corrective actions can be taken? So that's first main building block where technology helps, where technology provides greater visibility, greater transparency to a compliance officer to answer these questions right from their dashboard rather than make calls, send emails, and get frustrated as far as knowledge is concerned. Second most important thing is accountability. What is meant by accountability? We call accountability as having a named individual whose neck is on the line if this compliance doesn't get done. This, as I said earlier, is a performer and reviewer. Performer who's responsible for doing the work, reviewer, a person who's responsible for providing the corresponding review. Both of these people, they often forget about their compliance liabilities. So the monthly compliances are easy. They don't forget it because they occur very frequently and people remember those dates. But whenever you're dealing with quarterly, half-yearly, or annual compliances, they often forget the dates. And hence, it's important that somebody keeps reminding them every now and then before the due date that things are due and they may not have done it, and appropriate escalations happen so that that accountability can be established. And we like to use technology to make people accountable so that they cannot hide behind any excuse. So that's second area where technology can help. It establishes accountability. It ensures that people do not have excuses to miss stuff. The third important area here is ensuring timeliness. No compliance in the world is useful unless it was done in a timely manner. Because lack of timeliness results in interest expenses, it results in penalties, brings financial liabilities, and in recent times we have seen examples where people have gone to jail because they have deducted TDS and they've not deposited it as a part of finance and taxation compliance after even 4 quarters. And in scenarios like that, we have recently seen examples where people have gone to jail. So timeliness is very important. And just like I mentioned earlier, it's important that the key people are reminded of their compliance obligation, are reminded of their key dates. There are enough number of reminders that go to them. And if they still don't take action, escalations go to their management. in a timely manner so that they can initiate corrective action, they can make the right interventions so that the residual risk is surfaced, everybody's aware of where your risks are and why those risks exist, and appropriate decisions are being made to mitigate that risk. Last but not the least on this slide is traceability. For any medium to a large organization, you will always have scenarios where some compliances may get missed for one or more reasons. But when that happens, it's important to know what went wrong and be able to do a root cause analysis of such problems. Why this is required? So that you can enter what I like to call as a positive spiral of quality, where corrective action gets taken and one can continue to improve and strengthen the key processes around people and technology so that repeat instances don't occur. So that is where traceability is important. How technology can help? Technology knows when an item was assigned to what person, how many reminders were sent to them, how many escalations were sent to their supervisor, and still the job didn't get done. Did they even log into the system? Did they upload a document? Did they make a comment? Did they respond to a escalation comment by their supervisor? Nobody can do fool technology because technology has time and date stamp for every item that gets done. So when this situation occurs, we remove the emotion from the discussion. Management can have a fact-based discussion when the company ends up paying penalties or interest expenses. It can hold individuals accountable for delays. Now, one critical thing is when you have a tech solution in place, the one-upmanship or finger pointing goes away because you can always show evidences of what was done and why it was done or why it was not done, why things were missed, and so on. And that provides a lot of accountability within the system. Now, I hope this part is very clear. Let's look at how a tech solution helps companies to establish this item. So when we look at tech solutions, we look at these 6 critical ingredients. First, having smart dashboards. What is a dashboard? A dashboard is a single screen which provides you right information to the right people at the right time, color-coded, visually decipherable, so that you don't end up spending hours together to get to the basic details that you want to look at, so that you can take appropriate action. Smart dashboards make compliance officers smarter. They provide information which is easily consumable. It provides information which is actionable. And that's where a smart technology solution brings in smart dashboards which are easy to use, real-time updated, color-coded with drill-down capabilities. So the first help that technology can provide is bring those smart dashboards so that you get one quick sneak preview of the end-to-end compliance status across the length and breadth of your organization, just looking at it for a few seconds. Second, native mobile apps. In this day and age, I'm sure all of you would agree with me that there is never a dull moment. Either we are working or we are connected to our device. Most of us even carry this device to the bathroom when we go in the morning. That's how omnipresent this device is in our life. If you want to stay on top of your compliances, then we cannot expect users these days to remember a website, remember the ID password, go to the website, remember to click on specific items. Folks, those days are history. Today, if you do not have smart native mobile apps, you will not be able to stay on top of these notifications. What are these notifications? There are various kinds of notifications that happen. There are reminders that get sent on upcoming compliances or upcoming due dates. There are notifications on legal updates that may come to you based on your role in the organization. So if you are someone from the HR team and are responsible for about 10 or 15 acts and all the relevant compliances, you would want to know when these acts or compliances have changed so that you can appropriately make changes to your side of the story before you file the next compliance. Now, all of this is dependent on the fact that you are able to see that notification in the right time. Today, there is a deluge of information. everybody wants to send us so many information, so much data that we often get overwhelmed. So making sure that only the relevant pieces of data which is relevant to your work comes to you on your mobile phone so that you can look at that relevant item and make appropriate decision is key. So technology helps you get all of this data in an easy, secure, highly available and fault-tolerant manner on your mobile phones so that you can make those compliance decisions in time. Third area where technology helps is get these legal update notifications. Believe it or not, there are over 2,000 government websites across central government, various state governments, various local bodies today, which publish legal notifications. These notifications are published on various pages, and when they get published, today there are no way in which you can get an automatic alert from any one of these government websites. You are liable to go visit the website and look at the notification. So while the government has done a fantastic job of at least moving them from paper to electronic media, what is still missing in this whole puzzle is a proactive notification to the impacted parties so that you can get an alert when these things change. But guess what? Even when they put an alert in place, imagine getting these alerts from hundreds of websites a day, and obviously again it goes back to the deluge of information that we were talking about. Half of the times the notifications that get issued are complex legal documents, and it's not easy for a practitioner to decipher that information. So how technology helps? Today, we have created state-of-the-art, India's first and only digital compliance updates portal at avantis.co.in. And I invite you all to visit that and create your own free user ID to get these notifications. These notifications are highly personalizable. So just to give you a quick perspective, if you go back to the website, you can see that there are preferences that you can set up. So when you create an ID, these are preferences that you can set up. Preferences of central or state, preferences of various categories, preferences of various regulators, various industries that you may want to track, preferences of specific keywords that you want to track, or delivery of this information via daily, weekly, and monthly newsletters into your mailbox. Now, if you wanted to track specific states, then you can go from the list of states, check those states, right? Or remove certain states that you may not be interested in. So this is all personalizable. Depending on your organization's business, depending on your role in the company, you can go and select and choose to follow certain items and save your preferences. When you save your preferences, from the next period onwards, you will start getting all these legal updates in customizable and personalized format on your email ID. So going back, technology helps to make sure that we have access to all the personalized legal updates in time so that we can get information to make our jobs easy. Now, next area here is integrated compliance database. Oftentimes, there are companies will come and tell you that they have a technology product for compliance management. Now, this is only half the picture. Technology does not solve the compliance problem in isolation. I often look at technology as only one of the two parts in this equation. The first part is having a solution which is a tech platform which has dashboards, some workflows, document management, and so on. But the other big part of this puzzle is having a database, a compliance database that is highly reliable and highly trustworthy, and which is maintained on an hour-to-hour basis so that it never becomes stale. Now, that is where an integrated compliance management system comes in. And we have done a lot of work in this space where our systems today have over 1,100 acts, 58,000 plus compliances with 3,000 plus filings, and we capture around 15 legal updates a day. And this is automatically available to all our customers who use our product in a highly personalized manner. So that's the next way in which technology helps to make sure that you're not running helter-skelter to get a list of all these compliances and the relevant changes integrated into a tech platform. The next major area is integrated document management system. A typical compliance generates various kinds of documents, applications, working files, returns, challans, registrations, acknowledgements, receipts, and so on and so forth. And these, for a medium-sized organization, can easily be in tens of thousands a year. Today, Avantis digitizes lakhs of documents a month for its customers, which are easily available through search, sort, and various kinds of indices for easy consumption at any point in time. And this is what makes the life of a compliance officer easy, because they have access to the right information at the right time to make the right intervention. Imagine a scenario where you are up against a legal notice and you are trying to get the returns that were filed, the working files that were used to calculate that return from 2 years ago. And I can guarantee you 9 out of 10 times you will have a huge difficulty in finding those files, because these files were created on somebody's computer. That person may have left. IT may have reformatted their hard drives, and now you are up against a legal notice with a penalty going into lakhs of rupees, but you as a compliance officer not having enough information to justify it. And the reason is you do not have access to the data and information that was used by your predecessor to do these documents. And that is where integrated document management system with date and time stamps that can keep version management, that is tamper proof, is extremely important, and it helps the life of a compliance officer. And last but not the least here is reporting and notifications. And that is where capability to do on-demand reporting, standard reporting with graphs, charts, with drill down capabilities is important, so that every week you can get them in your mailbox. You can use filters and create these reports on your own at wish and make appropriate decisions for bringing greater visibility, transparency, and much greater control within your compliance program. So those are 6 ways in which technology seriously helps. One additional thing before we end this webinar is I would like all of you to go to your Play Store or App Store, whether you have Android or iOS, and look up RuleZBook App, RuleZBook, RuleZBook. Please do a search on this app. We have made a serious amount of investment in making an app which is a native mobile app for all of you who can keep yourself updated on all the legal updates and changes, along with details of various acts, and in a highly search and sort capable manner. So I request you to download this app. It will take you under 2 minutes to download this, and it takes another 1 or 2 minutes to onboard yourself on this app. It is a highly configurable and personalizable app. You can choose the central and state governments that you want to monitor. You can choose the category of compliance like labor, finance and taxation, EHS and secretarial and others that you would like to monitor. And the system then adds them to your watch list, and you can start watching these hundreds and thousands of acts and compliances, so that you can keep yourself aware of what is changing. And awareness is empowerment today. So that is critical. Please download this, look it up, and in case you have any suggestions on how we can improve your overall experience, I would love to hear from you. With that said, I again invite you to sign up for our newsletter, so that at least you now do not have to spend the time to go and research all the legal updates that are relevant to you. You can go to avantis.co.in and sign up quickly. So with this, I would want to end our webinar for today and open up our Q&A, so that we can engage with all of you for questions and answers. So let's get going. I'm here ready to answer questions. Please start asking questions. I'm available. So the first question here is, how much time does it take to come on board our platform? Great question. Thank you so much for asking this question. It takes anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks for a typical company to come on board our platform. And we have an extremely robust process to bring you on board. The first thing that we do is make sure that we do a compliance applicability assessment. What this means is we do a business discovery on you, understand who you are, where you are established, the nature of your establishment, the nature of work that you do, the products and services that you sell, the geographies you sell these products to, and so on and so forth. And based on this, we come up with all the applicable compliances. So we have a very good team, a lot of expertise here, which creates that comprehensive list of compliances for all of you. And then we review this with your subject matter experts. Once that is done, we go and map these compliances into the system, create the user IDs for the relevant people in your organization, train those people, and then help them go live. So great question. I hope this answers your question. For a small setup, we typically take about 2 weeks. For a larger setup, it can take between 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the geographical spread and number of factory and other locations. So that's the answer to your question. The second question here is, how safe is our information with you? Fantastic question. Thank you, Deepak, for asking this question. The information is very, very safe. If you know banking today, banking has a lot of automation done. Today, I don't recall when was the last time I actually went to a bank branch. Everything is secure with encryption standards. So when data goes to the cloud, data is encrypted with SSL, HTTPS 128-bit encryption. And when the data and documents, they reach the cloud platform, they are encrypted with AES 256-bit encryption, which is actually as secure as what government of United States, Department of Defense uses to secure its information. So until you actually go ahead and share your ID, password, and OTP with someone, they will not be able to see this data. Now, in our case, we actually have dual factor authentication just like a bank. So the first level of authentication is using your ID and password. And when there is a successful validation of ID and password, we send an OTP to your cell phone, and only using that OTP, which is a dual factor, you log in. So, we have taken the standards of international level, every best practice around the globe on data privacy, security is baked into our product, and it's highly, highly secure. The next question is, does your legal compliance updates cover Gram Panchayats also? So today, our legal compliance updates covers anything on the digital platform, and if there are digital platforms available for Gram Panchayat, then also. But when we bring you on board, we actually map you for Gram Panchayat, Zilla Parishad level compliances also. And that is a study that the team does, that's the research that it does. We have a very strong legal research facility and capability, and there's a 35-member team whose job is to do this research for you. So there's a question by Geeta Sridhar. What all key compliances need to be followed in an autonomous body? Geeta, thank you for asking that question. It's a very, very loaded question. We need to understand the nature of your establishment. Where is it present? What does it do? What functions or what does it manufacture? Are you a manufacturer or are you a service provider? And based on all of this, we need to do an assessment of applicability on your business. So if you are a listed company versus a private limited company versus a one-person company versus an LLP, the nature of compliances will change dramatically. If you're present in one state versus 10 states, then the compliances will change. If you do manufacturing versus you do services, those compliances will change. So that's a loaded question, Geeta, but thanks for asking. And I would encourage you to reach out to us for a deeper discussion on this subject. Another question that I have received is, what are the charges for accessing the platforms? Vishal, thank you for asking that question. The charges for accessing the platform have to be discussed in person after studying the scope of your work. Before I answer this question, we will need to understand, your size and scope, how many plants, locations, warehouses, offices that you may have. But the product offers a subscription-based pricing, and it starts from about 25,000 rupees a month for a small setup. So if you are dealing with a plant and a central office, then that's the kind of expense that you're looking at or investment that you're looking at on a monthly basis. And there is a one-time small fee for doing an applicability assessment, gap reporting, mapping all these compliances in the system, training all your users, and going live. The next question again by Deepak is, how is the back office support provided? Deepak, thank you so much for asking that question. As I said, we have a very sizable support organization, and there are two kinds of supports that we look at. One is legal support, and second is technology support. We provide you multiple options for reaching out to us. One of the easiest in the era of WhatsApp is chat support, and chat is deeply integrated into our tech platform. You can chat with our team of legal experts at any point in time by logging into the product. When you log into the product, there is a chat icon and you can start chatting, and you can then raise your queries to our people. In addition, you can raise a ticket onto us. There is a ticketing system built into the product. You can call us up on our telephone line for the call support. You can write to us on an email. So there are various ways in which we can provide support to you. The next question here is, can you elaborate what all covered under the commercial category? Yes, a lot of compliances are there in the commercial category. Various things such as your Electricity Act, Lift Act, Bureau of Indian Standards, which is BSI, or legal metrology, weights and measurement. These are all examples of typical acts that are covered as a part of the commercial category of compliances. So in addition, you will have things like the Boiler Act and so on, and they are all a part of the commercial category. There's another question from Chirag. For companies act compliances, since they are voluminous, whether we need additional resources to punch compliance into the system. Chirag, thank you so much for asking that question. Oftentimes I receive this question, in a technology system, Chirag, it is garbage in and garbage out. A system does not work unless it has data, right? So just like Tally or any other financial accounting system makes an accountant smarter, it does not replace an accountant. So today, if you look at the way Tally works, it does not go ahead and replace an existing accountant. However, that system makes the accountant smarter, more productive, more efficient. It gives them the empowerment to pull out reports at wish, quickly look and reconcile numbers and so on. Similarly, our system helps to smarten up the compliance officer. You go and employ, expensive compliance officers, and most of the time, if you look at their work, they are actually doing nothing more than follow-ups. They're making calls, they're chasing people down, they're in firefighting mode. And I'm not sure if that is the best use of a compliance officer in the company. They're not spending enough time building strategy, implementing strategy, providing intelligence into the system, because they don't have any more time left. So when we talk about our system, we do not need any new people. You do not need to hire any new people. The existing people need to go through a little bit of cultural change. Today, people feel confident and comfortable not sharing information on a centralized platform, because the moment information is there on a central platform, they can be questioned and they lose the power. So that is where there is a little bit of cultural change required. Just to give you an example, it takes less than 30 seconds for a performer to upload a document and change the status in our system. Now, if someone is responsible for 10 compliances, we are talking about an investment of 3 to 5 minutes overall in the whole month. Now, that is not a sizable effort, in my opinion, for changing the culture or the way the compliances are getting done in the organization. So if there is a genuine need to move your organization from an ad hoc, paper-based, and people-dependent compliance program, then asking people to change that culture from chalta hai, hota hai, dekh lenge, manage kar lenge, to an area where this is no more an option is not there, in my opinion. So you don't need anybody dedicated to punch in the data, because it takes less than 30 seconds, and the system has been designed in an extremely user-friendly manner so that anybody and everybody can upload their information. So we are approaching 4 o'clock now. It's about 3:58. I'm happy to take one last question before we wrap up today's webinar. Anybody, one last question? The question is, how do we approach you? Very simple. Please go to our website at avantis.co.in. And on the right side, I'm sharing my screen with you for a second. So you go to our website today. On the right side of the website, you will see a few ways of getting in touch with us. So if you see, there is a phone number which is 88935 I repeat, it is 88935 or you can write to us at sales@aventus.co.in. That's another way of getting in touch with us, and we can schedule a demo. Another question that I have just received is, how can we schedule the demo? Very simple. Just write to us at sales@aventus.co.in or call us at the IVR number that is out there, and we will be happy to have any one of our sales representatives. We have a pan-India presence. We have locations in NCR, Mumbai, Pune, Calcutta, Bangalore, Chennai, and Hyderabad. We have physical office presence in all of these locations, and we'll be happy to align you with one of our senior sales professionals who can come and have this discussion with you. So I think that brings us to 4 o'clock. I want to thank all of you for joining us on this webinar today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. We are here to make life simple for all of you, and we look forward to helping you in any possible form and shape. Feel free to reach out to us, share comments, share feedback, and if there are specific use cases that you think as the leading regulatory technology company in India we should be solving, I would personally love to hear from you. And if you have suggestions on the topic for our next webinar, please send us so. And if your suggestion is selected, we will send you a surprise gift after the webinar. Thank you so much for joining in. I really appreciate your time.